In August 1908, 2 innocent black men were hanged in Springfield, Illinois. A mob of thousands, enraged by false claims that a black man had raped a white woman, burned down several blocks of homes and businesses in the black neighborhoods of Springfield. Many were killed. But the lynching of Scott Burton and William Donegan, both elderly, respected businessmen, were the most brutal acts of all. The 1908 race riot of Springfield, the home of Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, was the catalyst for the birth of another legendary champion for racial justice, the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In 2014, crews digging along a railway corridor discovered the foundations of 5 of the original buildings destroyed in the riot. These sites will be carefully excavated. Their contents will be preserved and moved to safety. The foundations of the burned homes, too fragile to be moved, will remain interred and undisturbed. And this ground, and those who lived and died there, will be honored. The memorial will rise up from this site, giving voice to the men, women, and children who endured those dark days. The journey through the memorial begins along the Remembrance Garden Boardwalk. This shaded path will introduce visitors to the Springfield of 1908. The events that led up to the race riot and the larger story of its effect and its role in the creation of the NAACP. At the center of the memorial is the wound, a 300-foot-long metal sculpture with a large opening at its center. The opening is symbolic of a wound which the riot inflicted on the people and on the city, and which remains open. Once inside, visitors experience the riot through the words of participants and witnesses. The savagery from a century ago slashes through time into this placid space. Pale brick floors trace the outlines of the skeletal foundations beneath. New walls rise from the ruins, etched with the history of each home site. Near home site A, the running shape of the sculpture turns in upon itself to embrace a sacred marker. A bronze tree rises like a cross, a solemn sculptural remembrance of the lynching tree whose branches were taken by the mob as souvenirs. A thin veil of water will cling to the tree, inviting one's touch, the healing nature of water and of time. Amid the strife and the pain, there is hope. A contemplation space rests at the end of this special place, testifying to acts of kindness, the giving of shelter, and offering visitors a respite for reflection. A chance to appreciate the healing work done by the NAACP and countless others. This sacred place will become a destination and cultural landmark, welcoming the public and inviting them to enter this poignant story, seeking to educate current and future generations.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That video is available on YouTube. If you search 1908 Springfield Race Riot, that's about the first thing that pops up. You'll recognize it pretty quickly. That's been a powerful tool for us to use at the National Park Service to explain a little bit of the history and some of the importance of the site. So thank you for allowing us to use that again. We should note, for those of you who have not been to the site currently, the memorial is not created currently. The sites were simply excavated not too long ago, and they are awaiting their next use. Okay, do we have a representative from the city? Not quite yet. Okay, so we'll move on and we'll reserve some space for Mayor Langfelter at the end. What we're going to do next is have Julie Bell from the National Park Service Denver Service Center give an overview of the study process. Thank you, Julie.
All right, thank you, Toki, and thank you all for joining us here tonight. And thank you, Teresa and others, for getting the word out so we've have this packed room. My name is Julie Bell, and I work for the National Park Service, and I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, but I was born and raised in Hammond, Indiana, so not close to Springfield, but close to Chicago and close to my heart. So it's always great to get back to the Southwest, and everyone we've met has lived up to my my remembrance of how kind people are in the Midwest. And we really appreciate that. So as Toki said, I'm going to give you an overview of what a special resource study is and why we're conducting one for the Springfield Race Riot sites and associated events. Next slide, Dan. So I just wanted to go over some meeting objectives. As I said, we're going to introduce this study, why we're doing it. I'm going to explain the process and the steps that we go through to evaluate a site for inclusion in the National Park Service. And then we're going to show some slides at the end that will indicate where you can provide your feedback other than this meeting. So, next slide. All right, as Toki mentioned, in 2019, a reconnaissance study was done. First of all, that was a preliminary study to see if the resources associated with the Springfield Race Riots would merit further study. And it was kind of, you know, as a reconnaissance just means it's like gathering basic information. And then it was that study, which, as Toki mentioned, also came out back with a positive finding, meaning that the criteria that I'm going to walk you through is what we're evaluating the site against now. So special resource study just takes a deeper dive than the reconnaissance study does. Next slide. All right, so the study background, in 2019, legislation was introduced asking or directing the Secretary of the Interior to conduct a special resource study. And the Secretary of the Interior then tasks the National Park Service with doing that. So that's what we're doing now. This study started in March of this year. So a special resource study, we look at the potential for creating a National Park Service unit, and we look at 4 criteria, which I'll go into in depth in a little bit. So we evaluate the site against those 4 criteria, and that's you know, NPS policy and as directed by the National Park Service. I do want to point out that the study itself does not automatically create a National Park Service unit. There's excuse me. There's only 2 ways that can be done, and one is through congressional legislation, and the other is through the Antiquities Act that the President has the power to designate a site, as Teresa mentioned earlier. So all we're doing is basically collecting information to present to Congress. Slide. All right, so the study area that we're looking at, and again, this was written in the legislation, is basically the area of 10th Street and Madison Street. So we're looking at the blue there is the Badlands area, but we're also looking, the legislation also said to look at sites that were associated with the events of that August in 1908. So we're also looking at the William Donegan home, the site where he was lynched, Scott Burton's home and the site where he was lynched, as well as the state capitol, the state arsenal, Loper's restaurant, the county jail, and the Badlands area and the Levee area. So as mentioned, Mr. Mansberger has been working at the archaeological site since 2019, and this is the location where the video just showed the NAACP's design for the memorial on those locations of those 5 homes that are now archaeological remains. Next slide. All right, and then now we'll go into the criteria that we need to evaluate the site against. And in order to pass, I don't like using that term, but kind of make it a positive finding for the special resource study, all 4 of these criteria must be met. And I'll go into greater detail on all of them, but the site must be nationally significant. It must be suitable as a National Park Service unit, meaning, you know, does it have the right configuration? Can we get people there to visit the site and learn about it? It must be feasible. meaning can the Park Service take it on? What are the costs of acquiring the site and running the site? And the last one is the National Park Service the best manager of that site? Is there something that the Park Service can do that would be, again, I don't like using this term, but kind of the best management or the superior management of the site? So all 4 of these criteria must be met. Yeah, next one. Okay, so national significance. Is the site nationally significant? Is it telling a story that is important to the history of the United States? And in order to evaluate national significance, we use National Historic Landmark criteria. And I know there's a lot of terms I'm throwing out that have similar sounding names to it, but National Historic Landmark criteria is what we look at to evaluate if the site is nationally significant. If you go back one, the site was determined to be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. So I just want to point that out, but that's slightly different. The criteria is slightly different for the National Historic Landmark criteria. The second criteria is suitability. As I mentioned, is the site, is it something that the National Park Service would want to take on that is not already adequately represented in the National Park Service unit? In other words, is there another site that would tell the story of the Springfield race riots that is already being managed by someone else or is being managed by the National Park Service somewhere else in the country? Obviously, for this study, that answer is most likely no, because it's so tied to this community. But this is something that we have to evaluate it against. And then, as I mentioned, can we get people to the site to let them learn about it as well? Is there access to the site? Next criteria. All right, the third one is feasibility. This is what we look at to figure out the costs to the National Park Service. Are there costs for acquisition of the properties? What is the overall life costs for the site? How easy or difficult would it be for the Park Service to staff? We also look at, again, access. We want to identify if there's any threats to the resources that we have to think about and manage. And then again, staff or the staffing requirements to adequately run the site and have it open to the public. And the last criterion is the Park Service the best manager of the site? A lot of times when we do these special resource studies, there might be another entity that is already managing the site and they're doing a fine job, and the Park Service wouldn't necessarily add anything to it. When we look at this, we're also looking at partnership opportunities. Is there somebody that's willing to take on the management of the site or in partnership with the National Park Service? And one of the things that we'll look at is establishing a site as an affiliated area, which means that the Park Service doesn't take it over or becomes a Park Service unit, but it's an affiliated area, and then the site might have a lot of opportunities for partnership with the NPS and for technical assistance from the NPS.
I want to ask, what does the site actually consist of?
The site consists of right now we're looking at the remains of the 5 homes that were destroyed.
But it was more homes than that destroyed.
Right, and we are looking at those sites too. So we're looking at Mr. Burton's home, Mr. Donovan's home, the sites, the areas, those homes are no longer there. Loper's store, the lynching sites, the state capitol.
The lagoons and all that?
Yeah. So we are looking at those. We're looking at the firehouse as well, station number 5.
Did people ever compensated for that?
I'm sorry?
I said, well, did people ever compensated for that?
Compensated? Well, that's
As far as when they burned it down?
well.
I remember it was based on a false rape allegation.
We'll get to questions.
Yeah. There'll be time for more questions once we get through this. Yeah.
This right here.
Thank you, sir, but if you can allow her to finish her presentation, and then we'll have room for questions and answers.
Oh,
thank you so
yeah.
much.
Thank you.
That's all. I was asking questions.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Almost, close. But like I said, the sites must meet all of those criteria in order to be considered as a National Park Service unit. So I just wanted to share with you the timeline that we are doing this study in. The first thing we do is gather data on the resources. What is their current state? And that's what we've been doing since we started this study in March. Right now, we're at the public outreach stage because public outreach is very, very important to the National Park Service. We want to make sure that there's support for establishing a new unit, and we want to get feedback, and we want to learn more, and we want to especially get ideas on what we may be missing in this study. So that's what we're doing now. I'm going to go into greater detail on how you all can give us your feedback on this in a few minutes. Once I finish going through the rest of the steps, we are currently analyzing the 4 criteria, and that will continue on through the fall. In the late fall, we will compile all of the information that we've gathered, including the input that you're all going to give us, hopefully tonight and in the next few weeks. And we compile that all into a report that will be reviewed internally by the National Park Service staff. We then revise that report based on the comments that we get back. And then in the winter of 2023, we anticipate that we will finalize that report and then pass the study findings on to the Secretary of the Interior. And once that part is done, the National Park Service, our role is done in the study process. Then it is up to the Secretary of the Interior to introduce it to Congress, and it is up to Congress and or the President to act. So again, I just want to stress that the findings from the study do not establish a National Park Service unit. There's other steps that are out of the National Park Service's hands once we finish the study.
Julie, are your next steps about the how? Okay.
Yeah.
So before you get to the details of the how, I'll interrupt you and go back to the mayor and do a couple of things.
Okay.
Finish with the how. So
Okay.
The next questions are good though.
Okay. Yeah. So, excuse me. So these are just some questions that we have to prompt you. And we don't want answers right now, but we want you to think about this. And again, I'll show you how to give us that information in a little bit. But just some questions like, what are your visions for protecting the all of the sites that are associated with the race riot? What types of activities or experiences would you like to see if it becomes a National Park Service unit? What other ideas do you have or things that we should be aware of that we haven't addressed in the study process? Are there objects or buildings or other features or values or stories that you think are important, and please share those with us? And you know, bluntly, do you support or oppose a National Park Service unit? And then if there's any other questions or any other comments or ideas that you'd like to share with us.
Maybe leave that one up, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so you want me?
Let's leave that up for just a moment.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate that. Now you know much more about what a special resource study is and how Congress evaluates whether a new unit of the National Park System should be formed. You know more than most Americans. So we will help you to finish this up. What I'm going to do now is go back to have a statement from the city. Mayor Langfelter is here. We'll give him an opportunity to provide a few comments about this process. We'll leave these questions up so you can contemplate those while the mayor is speaking. And then we'll start our question and answer period. During the question and answer period, I'll help moderate that. We have a second microphone. We will have some timekeepers. We want to give as many people a chance to speak or ask questions as possible, and so we'll ask you to limit your comments to just a couple of minutes so that we can hear more voices. After the question and answer period, we'll come back to these screens about how to enter your comments on our website to get the most information out. Okay. We'll also provide that information to the NAACP, the city, the hospital, and all of our partners so that we don't skip over that step. Okay, Mr. Mayor, you're welcome to take the mic for a few minutes.
Thank you, Toki, and thank you to the National Park Service. We really appreciate your great work in trying to help us memorialize the site and really teach an important part of our history, but as importantly, our country's history. Because a lot of us, know about Abraham Lincoln and the great emancipator, and then you fast forward to today's world, President Barack Obama, he practices legislative roots just like Lincoln did here in Springfield. But what was not talked about enough or learned enough was what I call the arc in the middle, was the 1908 race riots, which led to the formation of the NAACP, and which is a great organization, as Teresa will say. And no offense to Ken Page, he used to be president, right? He does great work, but Teresa really knows how to pack it in. Right, and so we appreciate HSHS, David Boatwright, for being here. We really appreciate your time and your pledge for really making this site educate all of us to a greater level. And really, just a brief history, when my father was mayor, he was an immigrant from Vienna, Austria. He had to flee that country because of religious persecution came here. And it was grade schoolers that came up to the city council and asked them to memorialize the race riot sites. Yes. And so they got them to take action. As Velma Carey, that was related to Ken Page, your aunt, right? Yes. And others that really made that happen. And that was very significant, but it took over 80 years to make that happen. And it was an immigrant mayor that came to this city. So really that shows you how far behind we were, but in today's society, we're kind of ahead of the curve, believe it or not. With the memorialization, we partnered with the NAACP to make it more pronounced than what they were previously. And that's what it's all about. How do we really memorialize the site? Because nobody knew what was uncovered during the rail project. And so that's when it came to fruition. And so that's really what today is about for all of us. How do we really uncover and educate not only those within Springfield, but within our country, the importance of the race riots, and how in Springfield we have our own challenges, we have our own deficiencies, but how do we work together to make our community stronger for the future? And that's what it's all about for me personally. I take a personal responsibility to raise it to the level that it should be at, so we all can have a better future together and go beyond this. But we cannot forget our past. That's one thing my parents always taught me. Don't forget your past, because you can repeat it. And that's the important part of memorializing this historic site for all of us. So thank you, Teresa, for really making this happen. Thank you to the National Park Service, and also Senator Durbin's office, Senator Duckworth's office, Congressman LaHood, Congressman Davis, Alderman Gregory, and Alderman Williams, and Senator Turner now, that was the Alderwoman. They've all played an important role to get us to this point, so we really thank everybody. And those of you that are here, Floyd Mansberger, he's done great work in memorializing the site, but not only that, he wrote a report that you should go on the city's website that talks about the events, the people, and the places that form the East Side. And it's an important piece of history that we all need to know, because there's other historic sites that we want to save and preserve to show the East Side history, the Black history, African American history, and all the history for all of us to make our community strong. So if you want any information about that, just see Ken Page. He's on me about every day about that. But again, thank you. We look forward to your feedback, because that's what it's all about, getting your feedback. How can we memorialize this site to make it respectful for all of us? And thank you very much. Thank you, Candace Trees. We appreciate your service too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, we're going to move into the question and answer and comment period. I would ask those of you who can stand and want to ask a question to maybe come up and form a line here with me, and we'll use the second mic. For those of you who choose not to or wish not to stand, if you raise your hands, we'll call on you and then repeat your questions into the mics, I think, perhaps. So go ahead and come on up if you have some questions or things you'd like to ask. We did hear a few questions already from one of the gentlemen in the back. There was a question on whether the families whose lives and homes were burned and damaged were compensated. And I would say that we have done quite a bit of research on that, and there was compensation paid. It was probably not adequate in many cases, and not what you would consider just in today's standards. There were hundreds of criminal charges brought, and very few eventually resulted in an actual convictions.
So while my argument is coming up, I'm going to ask a couple people to step forward. I'm going to ask Marcus Johnson, the Executive Director for the Springfield Urban League. Let's give him a hand. Sunshine Clemens to step forward for Black Lives Matter. Representing Faith Coalition. Let's give him a hand. I'm going to ask the presidents of the sororities or fraternities to please come up. If you are a president or a spokesperson, you know how it goes in our organization. Please step forward. My name. I'm going to ask Gina Lathan to please come up with Group 66. To make sure that the National Park Services hears from our community partners and let them know that we do have the necessary support that is required to make this a national monument. Are there any other organizational leaders that I've missed because I can't see everybody around the room? Ken Page, please come forward. ACLU president. I'm going to have him come forward as the NAACP president. Look how he's looking at me. He didn't get up here. Thank you so much. Ken will come when the line dies down, okay? So go ahead and get started, please.
Thank you for this impressive demonstration of support from the community. Again, we appreciate it. We'll provide information on how to provide official letters of support from your organization if you would choose to do so. Thank you. And if anyone has a specific comment or question, we'll use the mic now, and we'll also give an opportunity for everyone else who's not representing an organization to do that. Any specific comments, gentlemen? That one's live, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus Johnson, President and CEO of the Springfield Urban League. First, I'd like to say thank you to Teresa Haley and the members of the Springfield branch of the NAACP and the National Park Service for allowing the opportunity to provide comments today regarding the installation of the 1908 Springfield Race Riot Monument. I will be brief, I promise I'll be brief. But Springfield, Illinois, the nationally recognized home of Abraham Lincoln, has historically been a city of divided sentiments. In 1908, as we all know, a smoldering atmosphere of mistrust and intolerance burst into flames during the race riot. However, one of the few positive outgrowths of the 1908 race riots was that it inspired a few influential people of the city to do something not so much for African Americans at that time, but in cooperation with them. That is a short story of how the now 96-year-old Springfield Urban League came to be as a result of the 1908 Springfield race riots. On a more personal note, as a graduate of a National Historic Site that sits 40 miles east of Montgomery, Alabama, Tuskegee Institute, now University, was authorized as a unit of the National Park Service on October 26, 1974. The historic campus sits as a monument in and of itself, preserving the legacy with structures and monuments that celebrate and honor the university built for and by African Americans in 1881. I share this because attending a university and living in a town with such a distinction from the National Park Service instilled a greater sense of pride, hope, and community for all who attended and visited the campus from across the world. It reminded us daily that we are our ancestors' wildest hopes and dreams, and that we truly are history in the making. A 1908 race riot monument erected here in Springfield will instill in the Springfield community a greater sense of pride, serve as a point of reference to the progress made, and remind all who live and visit our great city that the choices and actions we make today and our ability to engage in the tough, uncomfortable, but necessary conversations of race relations is not something to run away from, but run towards in the fight for racial and ethnic equality. With that, I humbly request full consideration of the request made by the Springfield branch of the NAACP, and can only hope that the things we do daily at the Springfield Urban League are celebrating the stories of the people, places, and sacrifices of those impacted by the 1908 race riots. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alderman Sean Gregory. Man, I hate coming after somebody. But no, I just really wanted to make a comment that you know, this is a special, you know, a time to even have this considered, especially for me, that young man who left and was so eager with those questions. You know, he's not the typical person to come to these meetings. So I'm glad I'm sorry he left so early, because you know, he's probably got a bag full of books, and he's been studying this. Mr. Floyd, you and him will go back and forth all night long, because he's really a knowledgeable young man. He really, you know, schools us and teaches us, you know, in a different element. So I was happy to see him here, and he's really eager. But, you know, and I've learned so much. I'm an alderman. I'm, you know, a little past 3 years in, and you know, when I went over to the race riot with Mr. Floyd, I hope I'm calling your name right, but he's so knowledgeable, and he was teaching some things, and Miss Gina Lathan, I've learned so many things from her. And you know, the first picture that we had of was Mr. Donegan, and you know, these days we would say he was the man back in them days, you know, and he was, you know, very well respected. He was a businessman. So I often think about what would life be like? What would black life be like in this city if that never happened? How farther along we would be. So the task that I'm charged with for the community that I represent, which is majority black, and is to reverse these things and to try to change these things. The mayor spoke on some historical sites on this side of the tracks that we talk about. One being the Ambidexter House, the Lincoln Colored Home, the first black firehouse. We are really trying to put some energy into those. Right now, the Ambidexter House is getting a new foundation on it. They got to lift it up right now. So what's special about that to me, I've been over there several times throughout it, is how strong that house is. It looks like it's ready to fall down, but they got it hosted up on stilts, and it's standing strong, just like our culture has over the years since this. So I just encourage the National Park Service, President Biden, and anybody who's paying attention to my voice to make this happen and happen soon, so we can have another win for Springfield. We have some beautiful things going on in Springfield with our railroads. So I've heard, you know, many of the qualifications, and we fit them all. So on, you know, behalf of the Citizens Award too, I fully support this, and we'll do all I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm gonna be brief. I don't have any prepared remarks, but anytime I'm in a room like this and we're speaking on this subject matter, I'll have to bring up the name Leroy Jordan. Leroy Jordan, this was a very special project to him. He was a Faith Coalition board member as well as a board member with the NAACP. And when the trains, when they were doing Carpenter Street and we ran into this site, he drug us to DC at the time to talk to Mr. LaHood, who was the transportation secretary for the United States then. And it was the beginning of this, and he would be so proud tonight, Teresa, to see how many steps we have taken toward this becoming a reality. So I thank God for you guys coming out, supporting this, and keeping this moving on. And I know if he was here, he'd thank you too. Thank you.
will be brief as well. Is this on? You hear?
Let's try this one again for a minute.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I will be brief as well. My name is Sunshine Clemens. I want to say I love seeing this room this full for something that is this important. I really think that, you know, we're here on Reconciliation Way, and I think that it is time that we get some reconciliation in Springfield. You cannot tell a true story without telling the whole story. So it is important that, you know, we learn a lot of history around here, but like my daughter had a project in school and we had to go around and find the Black history in Springfield, and it was a hunt. It was difficult. We had to go out and find it ourselves. We want our stories to be just as easily found as other people. So I appreciate the work of the NAACP and all the organizations that have partnered on this project. We've already sent a letter on behalf of Black Lives Matter Springfield in support of this, and we're happy to send another or many more or join on with any other organizations to do a collective letter. So I just want to say thank you for those that are here. It is important that we get the full story of Springfield. We have a rich history, and it is important that that richness is on display. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me through the mask. But my name is Paul Hudson. I'm the poll marker, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Springfield Alumni Chapter. Right here is Ben Sutton, who is Phi Beta Sigma. Then I've got, oh, there he is right there, which is Alpha Phi Alpha. These are black fraternities that are here, and we were all founded on this. My one question I have is, you've done a great job. There was a horrific incident with property and people. You're doing a good job with property. What about the people? When you talk about resources and you say, well, what else can we do? Talk about sending some resources so we can work with people. There are people that grew up in this city don't know about the 1908 riots. Grew up here. I have asked them, oh, where did that happen? So get into the resource of the people and our children, because now there's a thing being pushed out called critical race theory. Now, if you don't understand what that means the absence of this theory. So literally, take a look at that, and let's talk about the truth as it is. And I'm not going to go any further than that, but you want to know there is post-traumatic syndrome that is in our children, in the community. Address the people, especially our young people.
Organization.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Farrar from the Springfield and Central Illinois African American History Museum. And our mission is to tell authentic stories about African Americans and their culture in Springfield and Central Illinois. So to say the least, this is something that is extremely important to us. And we highly support this become a recognized and established monument here in the town. We also carry the entire story of the Springfield 1908 race riot in our museum. And so for all of you that are scratching your heads trying to keep the chronology together, trying to understand the psyche of Springfield in 1908, and really how it feeds into 2022, please come by and spend time. As we find when people do drop by, they say, oh, I'm just going to come for 5 minutes, and they end up staying an hour or more because they read all of the things or look at the pictures, look at the videos, and look at the whole story about the race riot. We hope in the future to work with our partners, the 2 principal museums here in town, the Presidential and the Illinois State Museum, to do a digitalization of that story. So while the monument will be down here telling you physically, looking at that, we hope to be the piece where you come and get the entire story before you. Sort of like Montgomery is, if you've ever visited that, with the Peace and Justice monuments, and then you go to the Legacy Museum and get the entire story about justice in America. So please come by. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 12 to 4, and to learn more and more about the 1908 race riot here in our town. Thank you so much. I'm Nancy Sage, and I serve as Executive Director of the Jewish Federation of Springfield. I want to thank the National Park Service, and I want to thank the NAACP. The Jewish Federation and NAACP have a long, long history of working together to fight injustice. Part of learning what is injustice is learning the history. I remember when I first learned about the race riot, I'm not from here, and it has had an impact on me personally ever since. And I would hope that absolutely this story needs to be told. It needs to be told publicly, it needs to be told over and over again, and it needs to be talked about. We can't heal or understand each other until we talk together and are willing to hear our stories, understand them, and understand the impact both individually on communities, and then perhaps we will be able to move forward in the way in which I think everybody in this room would like to move forward.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Gina Lathan, and I am the president of Route History, a museum that tells the story of the Black experience along Route 66 here in Springfield. We pride ourselves in making sure that we celebrate and recognize the excellence, the tragedy, and the perseverance of Black people in all throughout history. Over the weekend, actually I returned back on Monday because our history is something that I understand that it's not just an experience that we have on the curb of life, but it is a part of who we are. We carry it in our DNA, we carry it in our life experiences, and we carry it in ways that we don't know. And so it's very important that our young people, as well as adults, understand who they are, what they've experienced, and we begin a healing process and an understanding of the excellence and perseverance that Black people have gone through, but persevered and moved past it. On Monday, I returned back from Washington, D.C., where I took my 5-year-old grandson, and we did a photo shoot in front of the White House, in front of the African American History Museum, and in front of the Dr. King Monument. And it was more than just a backdrop on a photo, but I need him to understand who he is and the contributions that Black people have made throughout this country. And Springfield is his home. This is where he was born and raised. And it's so important to me and so important to many of you, I'm sure, that our children know of the history of the hometown that they have, the contributions of Black people who were entrepreneurs, who were community leaders, who were business owners, many of them who were Black men. It's very important that we tell those stories, and a big part of that story is the race riot of 1908. So I salute you, Teresa Haley, and thank you so much for the work you're doing. Route History Museum truly supports you in every way. If we can even do more than just write a letter, please let us know. And we have your back, so thank you.
My name is Ken Page. I'm wearing many hats tonight, but the first hat is the president of the ACLU. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, goes way back in their relationship with social justice issues and their relationship with the NAACP. And I'm take that hat off. And my second hat is I'm a Prince Hall Mason. I'm a Black Mason. You probably looked at me and figured that one out. But we own, and I'm a member of Central Lodge number 3. Central Lodge number 3 owns the first Black firehouse in the city of Springfield. That firehouse stands at 1310 East Adams. It was built there and it still stands there. We have been great stewards in taking care of that property. And I would like to say that in order to know your whole history, William Donegan was a member of Central Lodge number 3. At the time of his lynching, he was a junior warden at Central Lodge number 3. So he had a Masonic funeral and everything. So now it comes full circle. The Masons in 1970 bought that firehouse, and we've been in the process of renovating that firehouse, and it stands now a testament to our strength as a people and as an organization. And the mayor is correct in telling you that anything that's east of 11th Street that deserves to be preserved, I have been on him to say that Black firehouse, Lincoln's Colored Home, and the Judge Taylor House should be preserved. And we should use that monies that are available. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for applauding that. And we do support the NAACP's effort. And what you saw in that film, that monument, if there's any changes in that monument, I think that it should be brought to us, because Teresa and I sat many hours. I mean, many hours. Not just like a couple of minutes, many hours, going through different iterations of that monument, and we came to that conclusion, and we were all comfortable with that. And we also looked at where they're going to put an underpass next to that monument, how people would get there, and everything like that. And the city said they would donate that property across where they tore down the warming shelter, what that is, whatever that is, we still want that property donated. And yes, you can't leave it, that's our history. And so to make sure that when that underpass is put in place, that kids from east of 11th Street are able to ride their bikes and walk under the underpass safely to that site. So we do appreciate it, and the Prince Hall Masons do support the NAACP's effort and everyone's effort to make this as a monument. And hopefully your site is very friendly to people that will go on it and try to provide comment. It's not going to be difficult for me to find, because if it is, I'm going to bring that to Senator Durbin's attention. And it should be user-friendly. No, it should be user-friendly, and everybody should be able to click on it and provide comment. I know how government is. I was in there for 39 years, so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone. We're going to take one more comment, and then what we're going to do is run through quickly the commenting process. I do want you to know that we have note takers in the room, and so everything that's being said tonight is going to end up in our study without a doubt, 100%. So we'll let you speak, and then we'll go through a quick of like how to.
All right, that's a really hard act to follow. So I don't represent anybody. I'm a private citizen. I'm an architect here in town.
And your name is?
David Parker.
Thank you.
Moat Morthley Nutty Parker, so all of you, hire me. No. Anyway, so I'm a transplant from Chicago, and I lived in Springfield for probably 20 years before I even knew there was a race riot in 1908. And the way I found out was somebody put some signs up on the old State Capitol Plaza. And so I read this sign, and I was just really taken aback that this happened, and nobody's talking about it. And so, I got to thinking about it. We have Abraham Lincoln, we have the Civil War, the slaves are freed. It's like a Hollywood movie. Yay, we're done. Let's go home. But it's not. It's not done. The story keeps going. And so I think this monument is a way to help tell the rest of that story. Sure, everybody was freed, but it didn't solve all the problems. And so I think this is really important, especially for our kids, because you raise when you raise your kids, you want to raise them so that they understand what happened, so they don't repeat it. And if they don't know what happened, they can't, right? So as a private citizen, I think that this monument is really, really important, not only for Springfield, but for the nation and for the world. We get visitors from all over the world. They need to see this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Speaking on behalf of the National Park Service team, we will stay here and take questions and answers as long as the rest of you wish, and until Teresa kicks us out of her building. What we're going to do now, though, quickly is run through how to comment on the site so that you at least have that flavor. We'll also leave that information and bring that back to Teresa and have, figure out how to make that easily accessible to you at some of our partner sites through flyers or whatnot. Okay, we're going to do that quickly. Please be thinking of your questions and other comments you'd like to make, and we'll come right back to that after this part of the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you everyone who got up and spoke. We really appreciate it. As Toki said, we have Monica and John on our team who are taking notes tonight. So, and of course it's being recorded, so we're not going to miss anybody's comments. All right, so. But we do encourage you to go into the Park Service website and input your comments there as well, because we actually will take all the comments that we've heard tonight, all the comments that will be submitted on the website, and those will all go into the final report, which goes to the Secretary of Interior and onto Congress. So we have, it's not an easy website name, we have to make things a little complicated, but if you go into parkplanning.nps.gov and then put in Springfield SRS, you will be taken to the website. If you even just remember parkplanning.nps.gov, that you can search on Springfield.
You can take a photo of that, and it will turn out pretty good on my camera, my phone.
And our comment period is open now. It opened on August 3rd, and it will close on September 3rd. So, next slide, please, Dan. Oh, thank you. I'm looking at you, not here. So this is a screenshot of what you'll see when you put in that web address. It will take you to this site. It provides a lot of the information that I've given you here tonight. But over on the left, as you're looking at it, you'll see that open for comment here button. And if you click on that, it takes you to this next site, which we have to put in a few steps here. But if you click on that link there, the newsletter, then it will take you to more information about the site. But you'll see there's two buttons there. You click on either one of those to submit your comments. The Comment Now button, and it'll take you to this site. And the only thing we require, if you want to put your name in here, you're more than welcome, but you're not required. The only information that is required is your location information. We just want to know where people are commenting from. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, then, sorry, I don't have a screenshot of that. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see those 6 questions that we had up on the screen earlier. You can reply to those, but then there's also another space where you can put in whatever thoughts you have, and you don't have to reply to those questions either. So there's lots of different ways for you to give us your input. But at the bottom of the web page, you do have to hit the submit button for it to be recorded and to come to us. And we will see those every time we go into the website. We see all the comments that have been entered, whether or not the comment period is open or closed. So. And then, again, there's the website. We thank you very much for coming here tonight and for your interest in this. It's overwhelming for us to hear this. We're very grateful that you're taking time out, all the work that has gone into getting the Race Riot sites to the attention of the National Park Service and to start this study. We're really, really grateful for that. So thank you all.
Thank you, Julie. Come on up and we'll take some more questions. Is Ms. Marilyn Howard still here? Marilyn Howard is an employee of St. John's who works at the women's clinic, and she has been gracious enough to host several of us when we've gone over and visited their mural. She's a delightful person, and so if you do make your way over to the mural, I highly encourage you to speak with Ms. Marilyn Howard, who's the receptionist there. It's just a delight. Okay. Name,
Toki, thank you very much. My name is Dan Sikora, and I live in Washington, D.C., and this is my first time to Springfield, and I'd really like to thank the outstanding leadership of the National Park Service for putting on this, for doing this study and putting on the show, for Teresa, for everyone here. Just a little bit about my background. I'm Japanese American. 80 years ago this year, my family was taken from their homes in Washington State. They were, it was against the backdrop of World War II. They were sent to prison camp. They were unjustly incarcerated because of their race at Minidoka Relocation Center, which the National Park Service today manages as the Minidoka National Historic Site. And it's been an incredibly powerful tool for our road to healing. It's a place for learning. It's a place for us to heal. We in the Asian American community have gone through recently a lot of very similar things with the Black community, with COVID, hate crimes directed against us because of our race. And through the leadership of the National Park Service, the park is an important tool for learning and healing. We've all suffered trauma. Our traumas are different, but the pain is there. These sites are sites for healing. They're for learning. They're also about telling a story of agency. We in the Japanese American community, we were victims. We were victims of racism and prejudice, but we overcame that. And it's about our stories, about making things happen, and our road to healing. The Secretary of Interior right now, her family was her grandparents were separated as children, as 8 years old, and they were sent to federal Indian boarding schools. Indian country experienced a lot of similar pain, or they had their own trauma, they have their own pain, and they're on their road to healing. And this site is on Springfield and America's road to healing. So, question for Toki. If an organization wants to submit a letter rather than the comment through the comment portal, is there an email address that an organization can send an official, like from their letter? So,
do we have one set for the letter? No problem, Dan. I think that's easiest to come to Julie or myself, quite frankly. There's a press release that was just issued today that we've gotten out to several folks, but it does list me as the primary contact for that. I'm a little bit nervous about saying that out loud now, quite frankly, but TOKEY_BOSWELL, Toki_Boswell, TOKEY_BOSWELL at nps.gov. No, it didn't come through well? Okay. We'll put that up on the screen as well and make sure that Teresa has that for everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I just want to say a couple more things. There are 423 units of the National Park System. 423 units. And they tell the story, all kinds of stories of our nation's history. But despite the fact that there were scores of race riots and thousands of lynchings, there is no unit of the National Park Service that tells this story. And the time is now. And Springfield is ready. The other thing I want to say is that if you look at the history of the National Park Service, going back over 100 years, private philanthropy has been a key part of that. And people making generous gifts to the United States of America. So, City of Springfield, thank you for your generous offer to donate land to create this monument. HSHS St. John's, thank you for your commitment today to make a generous donation to make this monument a reality. Thank you, Hanson, for your tremendous in-kind leadership to support this effort. And finally, I just want to say how critically important it is that folks write in by September 3rd to fill the administrative record with support letters for the National Monument, for the study, your ideas, critically important. I also want to acknowledge a great partner in Washington, D.C., John Dunmore with Sierra Club, who's here with me today. So thank you very much.
I would ask John to come up and say a few words, please.
Hello everybody, John Dunmore from Washington, D.C. With the Sierra Club on the Governmental Affairs team. I'm also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I do want to say thank you first and foremost to Teresa. Teresa, you are a gem. You all have a gem here in Springfield. Her efforts are making waves in Washington, D.C. with the administration, with Congress, clearly the National Park Service due to them being here. Coupled with you all as well, so I definitely just want to say thank you to all. As my good friend Dan relayed, there's 423 national parks. With that, 25%, less than 25, represent diverse histories, cultures, and also movements. So there needs to be something done about that, in my opinion. And what I would like to do, I would like to urge, I know many folks in Springfield are just learning about this comment period, which opened up a week ago. So I would urge National Park Service to at least add an additional week for folks to submit these comments. In Washington, D.C., where I am, again, there are waves being made. You all have bipartisan support for establishing a national monument. Not also bipartisan, it's bicameral as well. Rodney Davis in the Senate. You have, I'm sorry, in the House. You have Dick Durbin in the House and also in the Senate. And also Duckworth, sorry about that, in the Senate as well. And I think that's extremely important. There's local support in Springfield as well. The stars align to make this happen and to make it happen soon. So again, I just want to say thank you to Teresa and also the community here in Springfield. You all are making waves, and I can't wait to come back to celebrate the establishment of a national monument here. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Well,
I think we have a couple of black pastors in here, and I'd like for them to come up and say a few words.
Please do. As you're making your way up, we'll go over a couple other things. You know, as we told you.
They're gone.
Okay.
They're gone to Bible study. That was their big
We've run a little over.
But we did have representatives from the black church on the east side here to support the monument tonight.
Wonderful. We'll look for some statements from them in the future, perhaps. So we mentioned earlier some of the criteria are community and public and partner support for a designation. You very firmly covered that one. I appreciate it. Municipal and institutional support at HS, St. John's, and City has been well represented tonight. We did have some questions earlier that I don't want to skip over. Folks have asked how much would it cost to run the site and build the memorial. And we do have some information about that. We'll include it in the study. Hanson Architects, I see a couple of representatives here in the room, have done a beautiful design. They've estimated that cost this year more or less around $6 million to build that memorial as pictured. That wouldn't include additional parking, any kind of a bookstore or a visitor center or restrooms kind of features, things like that. The city's investing a significant amount in the underpass and pedestrian walkway design. That's already going to be covered in that. And so the rest would be a combination of figuring out what's absolutely necessary to put on the site and then how the NPS could partner with others to get those things constructed if it was to be designated as a unit of the national park system. I will note too, there's some flyers going around. Happy to support that. The NPS does not have a position right now on the creation of a national memorial or unit of the park system, and that's because we've only been asked to do one thing by Congress, and that's to complete the study. So we're in the process of that, and as soon as the study is complete, there will be an official position that goes up to Congress with what should happen next. Okay, and that's the only direction at the moment.
Are there any other ways people can respond, with an email or through the website?
Email or the website. We're also happy to take any kind of handwritten comments as well, as long as we can figure out how to do that. If people want to drop off letters of support at the NAACP offices or at the city, we'd be happy to try to coordinate those things as well.
Sir, Toki, your final report that you're going to submit, will we have access to that report? Is it a confidential report? Are we going to have access to it?
Mr. Page asked about the final report. We won't produce a draft report for something this small because the timelines are close. But when the report is complete and has been transmitted to Congress by the Secretary, then it goes up on the website for everyone forever. And if you go to that website, parkplanning.nps.gov, you can see examples of other completed reports as well. So no, we're asking for your input at this point in time, and then the department and the National Park Service will finish that up, make our recommendations, and see what happens next. Other questions? I'm happy to repeat them for the microphone, for those of you who don't want to stand.
I have a question. You mentioned about shared management.
What's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Catherine Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Nevertheless, you said something about shared management of a site. Would you give an example of a site that might be known that has that kind of governance?
Yeah, the question is about shared management and shared governance. And I can come up with one, and I'll ask my other NPS folks to help me out as we go through that. So there are instances where legislation has said, NPS, you work with these other folks in order to get this done. And one example that I can think of right away is Redwoods. Redwoods is out in California where it is a joint national park and state park.
Which is on fire right now.
Possibly. But the state and the National Park Service work together in that place to manage collective. It's like the state and the national park are conjoined in that location. Dan?
Yeah, I'm working for Denver, but I'm from the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area. It is a partnership park. The Park Service owns very, very little land in downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul. And we work with the cities, and we work with the state to provide educational opportunities and interpretive opportunities, while those other local entities manage the land itself.
So that was St. Croix National Riverways, Mississippi National Scenic River. We have a new site at Pullman National Monument in Chicago, where the NPS owns only one structure. The state owns the historic hotel, and we are partnering with them and the other organizations in historic Pullman on the management plan for that unit. Mr. Ward's in the black shirt there. He was the former superintendent at the Jefferson Arch, Gateway Arch in St. Louis, which has a very strong partnership component. Although it is managed by the National Park Service, the city and the Convention Visitors Bureau and all the business entities there have shown up in a serious way to help the National Park Service get their jobs done.
Thank you.
Other questions? Again, I'm happy to repeat them. Dave. Oh, yeah.
There's also Harriet Tubman Park in Maryland, which is joint between the National Park Service and the state of Maryland. And then there's also Birmingham Civil Rights, which is a partnership run between the city and the National Park Service.
And the Harriet Tubman site is wonderful. It was like a religious experience. All right, Harriet.
Also, too, the Springfield branch of the NAACP in the city, we really want this site to be managed by the National Park Services for various reasons. We don't have the funding as a non-for-profit organization, and they do. They know how to manage national parks. We don't want this to be a temporary relationship. We want it to be a permanent relationship. Right. Also, the NAACP requests that a gift store be built on the site and be managed by them and house NAACP materials so people can go in there and buy hats, gloves, whatever they have at a gift store. We also want a parking lot there for people to come and sit and review the site, but we also want to make sure that there are adequate bathrooms. People are using obstacles to say, well, you're going to have to park a block away. If you go to the Abraham Lincoln site now, you park a block away before visiting Abraham Lincoln's home. So I just want to make sure we all understand that. Thank you.
The National Park site looks at several options to say how will this site work for visitors, and the idea that there would be partners nearby willing to donate lands or work with us on parking, construction, facilities is an important factor.
Katie? Hi, yeah, my name's Katie Sheehan. I just had a question. How significant is it to make it to this point in the process? Like, what percentage of projects make it past here and ultimately get the federal designation?
The question was about I guess what happens next and how often does something pass through this particular threshold and end up as a new unit. I worked in the office in Washington, D.C. for about 8 years that oversaw the special studies. And quite frankly, what we'd like to say is that every study is unique and it depends on the findings of the partners. But I will say that of the special resource studies that were authorized, approximately 60 to 75% of them had positive findings. Because even to get to this point, we know something about this site, and we would have recommended against it if we thought there was a possibility of failure. And of those sites that do have a positive finding, eventually about 75% of them become a unit of the National Park System in some way or another. So the odds historically have been pretty good. Now, that only matters on a case-by-case basis, and again, you've done your part to help us understand the situation here in Springfield. Other questions? Pardon me. Yes, sir. We'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
Yes. My name is Bob Moore. I'm an NAACP member. Which house, where will the legislation be introduced? The House or the Senate?
Mr. Bob Moore from the NAACP, he says, which house would the bill be introduced? I am not going to comment on that as the National Park Service, to tell you the truth. So the way that a place becomes a unit of the National Park System, it would have to pass both the House and the Senate and be signed by the President. And so for our purposes, it would not matter at all which introduces it first. It would just have to pass through both and then go through.
And we currently have support for both.
We have the gentleman in the back, and then I see another hand in the back of the room.
Hello, my name is Dejwa Simmons. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. The question I have deals with the descendants, kind of piggybacking off the young man in the back. How involved are the descendants in the study? How involved do you plan on them being in this project if it's fulfilled? I just want to know what their role will be in this project for this study.
Toby, we need this young man to know that we have the great grandson of Ida B. Wells right here in the house. Give him another hand. Involved, and so are the descendants of those who were killed and injured during this race riot.
Thank you. Okay, I think we had a hand in the back. Yes, sir.
My name is Dr. Brian Mitchell.
Dr. Brian Mitchell.
I'm a resident in town.
New to Springfield.
Previously a professor of African American history with a specialization in racialized violence and so.
Would you like to come to the mic, sir? Because I think we're going to appreciate what you have to hear.
And I'm probably the nation's leading scholar on the Elaine Race Massacre.
We'd like to talk to you more. We've studied the Elaine site as well. Yeah.
One of the things I want to do is give a note of recognition for the community, for its unity that I see here. We planned the 1919 commemoration of the Elaine Massacre, and it was a very divided story, a divided narrative, and that made it very difficult for outsiders outside the state to participate. What I have loved and what I see here today is the unity. That's true. And the support that I see from every facet of Springfield. And this is reassuring to me as a new resident on being here for 2 months. One of the things that I think, and I'm very, very happy about this one, because the NAACP is born out of this incident. And in the massacre of 1919, the NAACP becomes the paramount vanguard for civil rights in our nation. So there's this connection between these two locations, Springfield and Elaine, that are undeniable. One of the things that isn't known, and one of the things I hope to write a little bit about as I'm here, is a number of people from Elaine came here after the 1919. And many of them came to Chicago after 1919 as sanctuary. Just as Ida B. Wells went up to Chicago, the Johnston mother lived in Chicago. Some of the men who were put on death row in Elaine that Scipio Jones freed came to Illinois. And in fact, one is buried at the very same cemetery with Abraham Lincoln. And there's no monument, no headstone. So that is something that we have to correct, and that attaches itself directly to this Springfield Riot story and strengthens that story. So I pledge, if anybody needs my support as a new resident here and as someone who's trying to delve into the community and become a part of the community, if I can help in any way, please feel free to call upon.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell.
Dr. Brian, we're going to need your membership, your email, and your telephone number.
I'm just recapping that for the microphone and for the production later. That was Dr. Brian Mitchell, a historian of racial violence. He referenced the Elaine, Arkansas massacre and race riot in 1919. Thank you. And Day Johnson, who is from the National Park Service, and I have looked at that Elaine site as well. And he's correct in that there is dividedness among the community about how to tell the story of Elaine and whether or not, if it should be told, in fact. So there is a pretty strong distinction between what we're hearing in Springfield and that site. Okay, other questions? Floyd.
My name is Floyd Mansberger. I'm the archaeologist that's doing the work on site right now. And I'd just like to invite everybody. We are still doing some excavations on site. We have a couple more weeks there. We have one of the houses burned in 1908, opened up, and you can see the fire deposits. And it's an opportunity to actually have, to actually see something directly related to that historic, horrific event. So if you want to come out, we're there 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Please feel free to come on over and interpret signs. out there from the site, and they'll be back out on the site or out there executing. Feel free to stop on by.
Thank you, Floyd.
Yeah.
Dr. Mansberger, he just invited you to the site. You access that site by approaching on Madison and turning to the north just before you get to 11th Street, after you cross the railroad tracks. It is very striking right now. The archaeological work that's going on is amazing to see. You'll be able to see the burned kind of remnants of the foundations of those homes. That's an important factor that will not be visible to future visitors. It's something that's going to be covered up again, frankly, and some of it will be lost. The artifacts from these excavations, there's a great agreement between the city, the state, and the feds that the state museum will be the repository for the artifacts that are removed. And so that's a factor for the National Park Service too, of we would not have to be responsible for caretaking of those because there's already an entity that's ready to do that. And that saves us on our administration, and we make sure they're available to the public. So thank you, Floyd, for that generous offer to folks. How much longer will the site excavation be open? Another
2 weeks.
Another couple weeks. So we have limited time to get there and see what we can. Ma'am.
Just a quick question.
What's your name?
Shannon.
Shannon with the NAACP.
I may have heard you wrong. I heard something in what you said. You said it will be covered up and we won't be able to see it anymore. I've seen that it's very powerful to see the raw of what's left from the riot. How much does that factor into your decision, or how does that interpret itself in afterwards in your study, whether or not we are able to see the actual remains, which, you know, as we know, 21st century can be done. You can sit on it. There's all kinds of stuff that's made that where you could see it. How much does that factor in, though?
Dave, do you want to come up and talk maybe a little bit about erasure or some of the other factors? If not, we can have John do a little bit. But I'll start if the two of you want to walk up. When we look at the national significance of sites, there's a factor called integrity. And integrity can refer to lots of different things. It's what the historic fabric was built of, what's still there, is it still in the same place? Can you still get a sense of what happened and what it was like to be there at the time? In this case, the integrity of location is still there. It's still where it was. It's exactly where it was. It's right next to the train tracks. It's right next to the hospital. Those things have modified, but they're still in the same general kind of orientation. The materials are still the same. They've been burned, and so you get a different sense of it. But there's this other aspect that I'm going to ask John to talk about to some length because you can do it better than I.
Right, and it would be partially reiterating some of what Toki just said, but in this particular case, and this is by no means common in the national park system, or really in a lot of places that have experienced racial violence, it is this idea of the architecture of erasure. It's thinking about that the white mobs that perpetrated this violence, their purpose was to erase a community from the city. Typically, when we look at sites, and Toki was talking about integrity, what's important is not only that they represent a nationally significant story, but that there are remains of the property that can convey that historical significance. And we call that integrity. The problem is that when the significant event, in this case, a race riot, was intended to erase a community, there is nothing physically left. So what do we do in those cases? In that case, it almost seems like the standards of integrity aren't really fair. So what we do in this particular case is we start thinking about the architecture of erasure. We look at the setting of the site. When you go down to what used to be called the Badlands neighborhood at the time of the race riot, that was a vibrant, thriving community. When you go down there today and look at that archaeological site and you look around it, there is nothing there. And that's what the perpetrators of the riot intended. So in that way, we're not looking at integrity as what remains, what can you see that is from the historical period. Instead, what we're looking at is you get a sense, you get a real feeling for the violence that was committed, because you look around and where a vibrant community once was, it is empty. And that setting gives a powerful sense of what happened. When you compare that to an area that used to be called the Levee neighborhood, on the other hand, there's been a lot of urban renewal. That part was burned and destroyed as well, but it doesn't look empty. It doesn't have that feeling of desolation. So you just get a different sense there. So that's an example of how we're using a slightly different way of looking at this resource as we typically would have in the past. So the remains of an archaeological site, they're under the ground, but it's not just the site itself. It's this sort of feeling that you get when you stand there.
So let me ask it maybe a different way. One, do you all look at the rendering, the proposed rendering of what will be there, of the site of, of the sculpture garden as any way, does it factor into your decision? Such that, two, does it make a difference? Is it more compelling if the site, the remains, are interned or visible?
We don't think so. We've talked about this at length as a team. The significant event of the riot is unchanged. It's significant on its own. The formation of the NAACP following the riot is significant. And that is going to be unchanged regardless of what happens with the physical artifacts. The physical artifacts will still be available for viewing at the State Museum, the ones that have been harvested. And the ones that aren't, some of them will remain in the ground. And who's to say what we might go back and, who's to say what future site owners or managers might go back and discover 20 years down the road with new technology and other things. So no, there's a strong potential for that site to convey its importance no matter what's there.
I'd like for Beverly Peters to make some comments.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me if I get a little bit, Teresa, emotional about this. For many of you that don't know, I served as the chair of the 1908 race riots from 2008 through the next 15 months of the project. And Shannon, I know you're an attorney, right? And you ask a lot of questions. But I live with two of them too. I raised two of them. But you asked the right one, because we had that same question almost from the first meeting that we had with St. John's. What are people going to say when this is built that they did not see when it was under earth? And Catherine was at that first meeting also, because we have to know what was there, not what we will look at when the project is done. Right. And the question was answered, so I assume somebody took notes, because they say if you don't have a secretary, you don't have a meeting. And so that's because you have to take notes. And what was said in that meeting, and I'm sure I have those notes somewhere in my mountain of notes that Catherine Harris sent me that took over my house, was that pictures would be taken to show the before and after. When you see something and you thought, oh, that's really beautiful. Well, when you see the before, then you really get the historical perspective of what happened there. And the before makes you fall into tears, Mr. Great-grandson. Because we know the Ida B. Wells and all the other people that came. And you have to remember, the 1908 race riot happened before there was ever an NAACP. And we want to remember that too, how far the NAACP has brought this project. And they have called Teresa's name enough to make a book tonight. So I'm going to say it again, though. We have to applaud her. And Kenny, I cannot say enough about Ken Page. Where did he go?
Right over here. My best friend.
Because, as she said, Kenneth Page served as the first president when I was the chair, and we went to the mayor's office and say, we want something to happen from this. And I don't want to be here all night either, but Shannon, you could not have brought up a better subject. It's as good as any tonight, because we need to know what happened before and how it looked. And how it looks with St. John's. And I'm always putting and I'm so hurt to hear that many of you in this room don't know the 1908 race riot story. Because the more I tell it, the better cook my husband becomes, because I'm not cooking. But I've always said, as many, and there are a lot of people that are telling the story, including the African American History Museum. We had a whole segment on it last year. I saw Nell Clay here too, in addition to Carolyn. And the room, like this room, was packed. And that was even with COVID, and they had to turn away people because of the separation of numbers. Because you need to know, our children need to know. And Teresa, we're going to keep calling your name, we're going to keep calling Kenneth's name, and we're going to keep calling Archie Lance's name, who also became the president after Kenny decided he had had enough. Okay, he did arrest. You all know how blind he is. But the point of the matter is, we need to know all of the history. You can't see it with the new stuff. We have to see the raw, somebody used that word tonight, the raw stuff. And I hope those pictures are there, and the National Park Service has them, I'm sure, and we will see those along with, because we have to know how far we have come, and it gives us a look into how far we need to go. Thank you for allowing me to take you into the late night.
Library of Congress out in Washington, D.C. And when we travel to the African American History Museum, you see all kinds of wonderful artifacts that you can touch and feel. There was nothing on the NAACP 1908 race riot that led to the start. So to know that these artifacts are traveling to Washington, D.C., and that some of them are staying in Springfield, and some of them will be traveling to our schools, not only in Springfield, but around the state and around the country, where people can see, touch, and feel, and put themselves in that state at that particular time. I wish we had some of those artifacts here tonight, but please look at the poster. Attend activities and functions placed by the NAACP. And although they're going to be housed at the museum, they are still in NAACP. And they are still a part of this community. And what I want to say is there is unity in community, and especially here tonight. And I need all of you to know that we love you, we appreciate you, because the NAACP is not just about black folks. It's about all folks. And if you have an opportunity to go through St. John's and look at that mural on the wall that Preston Jackson put together, there were black victims and white victims and other folks all laying hand in hand. There were the nurses, the doctors taking care of all of us. They didn't see color, they saw patients. And in Springfield, we don't want us to see colors. We want us to see unity in our community. And I want Hanson to say something. I want Kevin to come forward. Come on up here, let's give him a hand of encouragement. To keep this in the forefront and to keep this education going. So Hanson, let's give Kevin Seals another hand.
Well, thank you all very much. I represent Hanson Professional Services. My name is Kevin Seals. I'm the Chief Environmental Scientist with Hanson. I've been doing this job for 35 years here in Springfield, and we have been very honored to be able to accept the job of the Springfield Rail Improvements Project by the City of Springfield to be able to do this large infrastructure project that's going to change the face of Springfield for the future. To be able to have a project like this, of this magnitude, and to do it in your own hometown gives us great pride for the community. One of the things we've seen back in 2014 when we did our first construction piece on this project was the Carpenter Street underpass. We started in 2014, and one of the first things we did was uncover some of the St. John's parking lot area, and that's when the house foundations were discovered. We brought Floyd Mansberger at Fever River Research into the study, and since 2014, he's been working literally almost every single day on the artifacts, not only with the race riot site, but other known archaeological sites through the whole city of Springfield. No one in, I think, the world knows more about Springfield history than Floyd Mansberger. So I think he needs a round of applause. We have pushed him very, very hard to keep this project alive, to keep these studies going. He's prepared some fabulous documents. Some of them haven't been released yet. They need to be approved by the Federal Railroad Administration, but they will soon be released. They will be on the city's website. They will be on our project website. There's already a lot of information on our project website. You can go on to www.springfieldrailroad.com. Very simple, springfieldrailroad.com. Hit the archaeological tab, and there's a lot of the information on this site and other parts of the Springfield Railroad project in that website. Not only has this project uncovered this particular archaeological site, which does have all the significance and puts us here where we are today, but it's also spun off great community relations in Springfield. You know, when I got involved with this, I didn't know much about the Springfield Race Riot either. So I have learned a lot in the last 8 years. I look across the crowd here, I know many of you. I personally have been the guy running around town for the last 8 years telling this story. And as it progresses, I've been to a lot of your community functions, your churches, your different events, given presentations and updates on where we are with the study and the archaeological site, using Floyd's information to disseminate this information. So I've gotten to know a lot of you, and I look at you all as friends in the community. And I think we've gone a long way in race relations in Springfield. It didn't have the best past, but I think it's got a very bright future. And as we build this community relationship together, one of the spin-off projects from this rail project was the creation of the Grow Our Own Minority Participation Program. Yes. That is funded by the city and the county as well as Hanson. It's a program to teach youth to get into STEM curriculums, science, technology, engineering, and math. We provide all expense-paid functions for minority youth to get involved in various programs so they can go on and further obtain educational degrees and maybe come back and stay in the community with full-time positions. Yes. We've been doing this for 9 years now. It's been a very successful program. And again, I've gotten to know a lot of you folks out here in that program as well. So again, we thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to work for you in the city of Springfield. And we see a very bright future with this project and this monument.
Thank you, Kevin. We should say thank you to Kevin and Floyd from Hanson and Fever River Research for providing a lot of your background documentation to us as part of the study. We've been able to lean on your documentations and everything else. We should also note that the agreements that the two of you brokered with the city and the feds in terms of recording the archaeological investigations are very important. There's some video time-lapse photography there as well as still photography that will be available to the future memorials. It should be one be designated. I have a couple people standing and then a couple people kind of raising their hands. So a lady in the mask and then the woman behind you.
My name is Ann Mosley. I'm a local historian here for Central Illinois. I've been doing quite a bit of research on this because I actually was born and raised in Chatham, Illinois, right next door to Springfield. And I grew up with a father who worked within the local history of Central Illinois and never heard about the race riot until I met Catherine Harris. And I didn't hear about it until I was in college. So to give you an idea of the local education here in Central Illinois, not even hearing about it, and even having historians surrounding you, to kind of give you an idea. But I wanted to share this because I was very inspired by everyone who was talking and supporting the project here. And I've been doing some research with the looking in the records for the Illinois State Historical Society. I just want to let everyone know that the Illinois Colored Historical Society was founded before the Abraham Lincoln Association, which is the oldest Abraham Lincoln Association in the nation. And this is what they stated their goal was, to help give you a little bit more momentum, even though we're kind of going at record speed pace. Said the Colored Historical Society, this is in 1912, of Illinois, located in Springfield, has asked me to report for it that it has 60 active members who are much interested in preserving the history of their race and its struggles for growth and betterment. I believe this is the only colored historical society in the state. We have received some gifts for which we desire to share. The more research I've done in this, and doing the history behind the Illinois Colored Historical Society, they disappear from the record. There is no other papers connected to this organization. We don't know if it's with the NAACP or with the Urban League or somewhere else. If you find them, let us know. We want to look at them. Because this specific group in the committee minutes for the Historical Society, the reason why they were formed separate of the State Historical Society was because they were afraid that the colored history of the state of Illinois would be erased, not talked about, or discussed, or shared and preserved. And so what you are doing today, you are living out the legacy of people who lived before the 1908 race riots, the people who were concerned about the history of the state and race relations, and making sure the whole story is being told. And this is coming from historical record. So for those of us in the history field and preservation field, having those primary source materials stating the actual thoughts, ideas, and desires of previous citizens of this state, you are doing exactly what they have asked for. And I want to thank everyone involved, all the partners involved. And it is my hope that there will be more students who will learn about the 1908 race riot and have the opportunity to understand it, where my generation didn't have the opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Would you like to come up and use the microphone? You're welcome to if you wish to.
I'm really not that loud.
Okay.
Probably a good idea. I don't know.
While you're doing that, I'll mention that the National Park Service, a couple of us representatives did meet with a local Catholic school teacher just for lunch today, and did learn that it's not entirely absent from the curriculum. There are plenty of school districts that do include the 1908 race riot as part of their learning curricula. It may be more common now than it has been in the past, but I think it is making a difference.
May I ask what Catholic school you went?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's good. Well, I'm going to echo a little bit of what Ann Mosley said. I'm Gabby Antonacci. I graduated from high school in 2013. I'm a Springfield area resident. I went to Rochester, and I went to Catholic school here in Springfield. I was in the 7th grade during the 100th anniversary of the Springfield race riots. I had no idea until college as well. I was probably like 23, and I saw a passing mention in a book, and so I went to Wikipedia to learn about it, and that was the start. And now I study it in college, and it's my main focus. What I want to know is, how will this monument set itself apart from the other monuments and their connection with schools and their connection with education? How will it highlight not only the area that it's on, but also the erasure of businesses and other buildings that were there? As many of you probably know, the Horseman building stands on what is largely the Levee District. There were dozens and dozens of businesses run by Black and immigrant and Jewish people there that aren't remembered, aren't celebrated, people who made an impact. How will those stories make their way into this monument?
Thank you for your passion in that background. I hate to punt, but I'm going to in this particular case and say that is an excellent question for the management of the new park unit if one is established. That would be a very big challenge and a great opportunity for someone to come in and try to figure out if a park unit is created, right? So again, right now the National Park Service's question to be sent to Congress is it possible? Is it feasible? Would it make sense? Could a national park unit be here and work? Okay, so that's the question we're answering for now. If one is designated, then what we'd have to do is bring in new people, new staff, different kinds of NPS employees that would help with those exact efforts. Slightly related, so I'll talk about it. One of the questions we have to ask is, would it be cost efficient to run a unit of the National Park System in this location? And we have the benefit of having Lincoln Home National Historic Site just down the road. Lincoln Home would be able, most likely, to provide a lot of the administrative needs for a new park unit. it would be very unlikely that a brand new entire administration or headquarters would be established for such a place. We would simply take advantage of scales of efficiency, and that would be a positive thing that the report could find. So to answer your question, it's possible that the first employees of a new unit, if one is designated and is operational, could look at just those kind of features, could focus on that.
Dan has a question.
Now we should ask too if the Mr. Boatwright or the mayor have any additional thoughts as well.
Sure. So I've got a request or a plea, and then a question which you somewhat already answered, but still want your advice on it. So,
state your name, sir.
So again, Dan Duster. I'm a great grandson of Ida B. Wells. So again, honored to be here. Teresa, thank you for having me. And no preaching to the choir, but as I talk about this and I've encouraged people to vote is, you all showing up is the beginning, right? So don't let this be the end. Please write to the Park Planning Service, and not only do you write, get 5 other people. So if each person in here, we can multiply these efforts. So I commit to getting at least 20 people, in addition to myself, to writing on behalf of the NAACP to have the monument here in Springfield. So please do the same. Because again, us doing it alone, we're already doing it. So it's convincing other people, getting other people to participate. So my question to you, because you somewhat answered it, but to me, the effectiveness of this and of such monuments is dialogue that happens as a result. And so it sounds like that would not necessarily be on behalf of the National Park Service to do that, but if this does move forward, how can we, the community, make sure that they have structured dialogue to talk about the monument and the significance of it?
Thank you for that question and for your appeal to get others interested in writing us back. I wonder if there might be some of my other NPS colleagues who would be interested in talking about that. As we've noted, there are 420 some units of the national park system. I work with about 60 of them in the Midwest is all, and so I know there are things happening out there in the national park system that I am not aware of and not qualified to talk about. And structured dialogue about really hard issues is almost certainly one of them. We always on our staff have interpreters and educators whose job it is to come up with meaningful ways to engage the public. We know that can be a very effective one. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any better answers for you than that, unless any of my colleagues feel brave and wish to speak a little bit more about their experiences. Okay, might have to have a little bit further dialogue without that. But I think we've heard the plea tonight that if something was established, that it would be important to continue engagements like this. Mr. Boatwright, Mr. Mayor, not to put you on the spot, but there's an opportunity if either of you would like to say anything more this evening. Otherwise, I think we may be moving towards wrapping up. It's 8 o'clock already. That time flew by. The website is there. My personal email address is right there. I'm afraid to check my phone when we're done and see how it goes. But we will take the comments at least through the Labor Day holiday. And so we look forward to hearing more from you about what you think should happen here, your thoughts on those 6 questions that we posed. Thank you to all of the speakers and the presenters. Thank you for everyone who attended this evening and helped us get the word out. City AV folks, thank you for your time.
Thank you.